Now, so far in all of our Vue applications, we've declared any and all data inside the components themselves right here, like this. Now, more often than not, when we create websites, that data will be stored somewhere else instead, like in a database. And we normally have to fetch that data from an API endpoint or something like that. So in this small chapter, I just want to show you how we can fetch external data from inside a Vue component. Now, to begin with, we won't be working with a database because I don't want to introduce too many concepts at one time. So instead, we'll use a package called JSON server to simulate an API that we can make requests to. So JSON server basically allows us to use a simple JSON file like this containing data as a database resource with various different endpoints. So for example, I could create a JSON file called db.json with blog data inside it. I would then use JSON server to watch that file and provide us with local API endpoints to interact with whatever resources we define inside that file. So JSON server basically wraps our JSON file with API endpoints, and it gives us these endpoints so we can interact with this data. In this case, it would be /blogs to get all of the data. That would be a GET request. If we wanted to add new data, we'd send a POST request to /blogs. To get a single blog, we'd go to /blogs/ID. So it provides these endpoints and more as well to interact with this data, and then we can do that locally from our Vue components. So JSON server really just allows us a quick way, an easy way to work with local data that simulates how an API behaves. It's very good for learning, practicing and developing, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So the first thing I'm going to do to set this up is to create a db.json file. Now I'm going to create this in the root of the project, and generally when I work with data like this, I create a data folder and then I place it inside there. So let me create a db.json file. And by the way, you don't have to call it db, call it what you want. db just stands for database since we are storing data in it. Okay, so for those of you who have never worked with JSON before, it's very similar to how a JavaScript object looks. So it would start with curly braces, much like an object, and then we have key value pairs. But there are a couple of subtle differences. First of all of the keys must be in double quotes, and that's not the case in JavaScript objects. So when we create a key, we put it in double quotes like this. Now, when we're creating a JSON file for JSON server, any top level keys are seen as resources. So for example, we want a jobs resource, and that would be the key. So this is going to be an array of data. Now what I'm going to do is just paste in 3 different objects so you don't have to watch me type them out from scratch. Now, I wanted to just quickly mention the other difference as well in JSON than a JavaScript object, and that is that when we use a string as a value, the string must be in double quotes as well. If this was single quotes, it wouldn't be valid JSON. So this is our JSON file for the jobs resource. Now, if we had multiple different resources, for example, we could have jobs and we could have something else like blogs, then we just create another top level property like this, and then when we watch this with JSON server, it would see we have 2 different resources and we could interact with both of those. So we only want one resource. I just wanted to show you that you could do that. I'm going to save it and close this off. The next thing we need to do is install the JSON server package locally inside this project. Now to do that, we need to open up a terminal. Now I already have the local host for the Vue application running right here because we ran before npm run serve. So I need to open up a new terminal by clicking this button right here. And then over here, I'll say npm install. This is how we install a package locally, and the package is called JSON-server. Now, if you've got a really old version of Node, I think it's version 4 or less, anything less than 5, then you'll also have to use the save flag like so. But if you've got a newer version of Node, then you don't have to do that. So I'm going to press enter, and that's going to install the package locally into the computer. And it's local because we didn't use the -g flag, which stands for global, and that would install something globally on our computer. This was just locally. So now, if we take a look inside package.json, we can see that JSON server is now a dependency. That's been installed and it will be stored inside the node modules folder. So how do we actually use this to watch a file? Well, it's pretty simple. All we need to do is come down here in the terminal and say JSON server, like so, space, and then -- watch to watch a file, and then the name of the file, the path to the file. Now, in our case, that's in the data folder /db.json. So I'm going to press enter, and now we can see that it's spun up a local development server on port 3000. That's different from our Vue website, which is on port 8080. So the JSON server is using port 3000, and then the endpoint to get the jobs is /jobs. If we had multiple resources, then we would have different endpoints. Let me just demonstrate that. I'm going to go to db.json and add in another resource again. So let me just say blogs, and that is going to be an empty array. Save that, and now we can see we have two different resources down here. So JSON server was watching this file for changes, it's noticed another resource, and it's given us an endpoint for that as well. We don't need it, so I'm just going to remove it again, and we're just going to use jobs. But if we now open this up in a browser, then it's going to send a GET request for this resource right here, and it's going to send back JSON with all of these different objects included. So let me try that. I'm going to open this up in a browser over here. I'm going to control click to do that. And now we can see we get all of this JSON back in the browser. Now, typically, we don't want to be sending GET requests for our JSON inside the browser address bar like this. What we want to do is send those requests from our components, for example, inside the jobs component right here, where we have all of these jobs. We want to send it from this component to retrieve that data so we can cycle through the data in the template and output it on the screen. So we're going to start that process in the next lecture.